Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Wayne here and welcome to another video. Something a little bit different for you for this one because I wanted to talk about something. I wanted to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. I went to university to study this, it's what I have a degree in, and yeah, I fancy to talk about something a little bit different while at the same time tying it into gaming and Assassin's Creed. And it's also working as a kind of an experiment because there isn't a multiplayer in AC Unity or AC Rogue. I'm testing out the waters, seeing what other kinds of content I can do in the future when it comes to November and those games come out. As you can guess, this is kind of relaxed and a bit mellow. I'm going all the time. This is not really scripted. I'm just kind of spitballing and I'm just going to kind of talk. But yeah, I wanted to talk about narrative, and narrative in storytelling, narrative structure, and narrative in video games as well a little bit, and just storytelling in general. It's something that I really enjoy, it's a passion of mine. I have ruined many movies for my friends and my wife because I can almost anticipate what's going to happen next in the story because of what I know, and because I've studied all this, and you can kind of anticipate what's going to happen. So I wanted to talk about it and talk about some of the details that go into storytelling and narrative structure. This video is going to be in two parts. Part one, this one I'm going to be talking about plot, and then in the second video, part two, I'm going to be talking about narrative structure itself. When it comes to writing a story, the first thing you really need to do is know what kind of story you want to tell. Within any kind of game, book, film, or TV show, any kind of general entertainment media, you can pretty much boil down the story to one of 7 basic plots. Now these are very basic plots. These are just one sentence which can kind of give an example of what the overall story is going to be. When you go and pitch an idea for a film or a game or a TV show, odds are one of these are mentioned, one of these kinds of 7 stories are mentioned with a basic plot line. Just to give an example, they're a great way to give a basic rundown, an example of the story you are ultimately going to try and tell. Like I said, there's 7 of them. First one is called Overcoming the Monster. It's basically the protagonist, the hero, sets out to defeat the villain, who is a big threat and a force that plans to take over the world, really, or the protagonist's home. I mean, like, there's so many examples of this throughout cinema. War of the Worlds, for example. Many sci-fi based games, Mass Effect being one of them, and so on. The second story is Rags to Riches, which is pretty self-explanatory, really. It's when a poor antagonist acquires power and wealth, while in return you can also see a powerful and wealthy individual going down the path into poordom. The best example, Aladdin, Prince and the Pauper, another great example. And even games like Grand Theft Auto, Vice City springs to mind, where you've got Tommy Vercetti, and he kind of starts out as a street thug and he kind of works his way up and he gets all these mansions and that sort of thing. The next one is The Quest, where the protagonist, the hero, with his companions or whatever, set out to find an object in a far location, and they face obstacles and all these different things, temptations, challenges along the way. You can pretty much find these in any kind of quest-based game. Skyrim is a great example of that. Those really heavy fantasy world games play a lot on the notion of the quest narrative. And within certain films, you can see Wizard of Oz as well, which also ties into another story, which is next, which is called The Voyage Home. The fourth one is Voyage Home, or The Voyage and Return, where the character finds themselves in a strange place and it's up to them to try and work their way to get back home. This is normally a consensus within certain horror games where they kind of wake up in a strange place and then they have to face horrors and monsters to try and get back home. Alice in Wonderland is a great example of this, waking up in Wonderland and she has to get home through one form of event or another. Moving on, you've got the comedy. Now we're heading into the basic kind of Greek tragedy birth roots, and you often find it used in romantic comedies. So, for example, Bridget Jones's Diary and a lot of British-style romantic comedies, where the basic outline is the protagonists, two of them, are destined to fall in love, and they're kept apart throughout the film, and then by the end they're met together. You can see it as a subplot in certain video games. I expect it to appear within as a subplot within AC Unity between Arno and Elise. Sorry, I'm completely bad with names on that one. Elise, I believe her name is. But yeah, you expect it to see it in there. You see it in Assassin's Creed Revelations with Maria and Altair as well. So yeah, the comedy, even though it's called the comedy, it can also be tied in and indicate a love story as well. Not necessarily comedy in terms of laughs as well. Moving on, you've got the tragedy plot, which is the standard plot of Star Wars, really, the prequels anyway, where the villain becomes the hero becomes the villain, and then kind of goes down this downward spiral, and he falls from grace, as it's often called. You can often find this one in Julius Caesar, hell, even Godfather Part 3 it appears in. I'm expecting it to appear in Assassin's Creed Rogue, with Shay Cormac going down this downward spiral, becoming a Templar, and then he ultimately realizes that this Templar stuff isn't all that bad, and in fact the assassins are the villains. Anyway, moving on, the last and final one is the Rebirth. And now this one can often be called the redemption story as well, or tied into the redemption story as well, where the protagonist is generally the villain or a unlikable character, and he basically goes through a transformation and a redemption story to ultimately become a good person. As far as this narrative is tied in, you can see it in AC1, in Assassin's Creed 1, because Altair is generally a unlikable, obnoxious character at the beginning, and then he kind of goes through this transformation and this self-revelation and self-redemption arc to ultimately become a well-disciplined assassin. You can see it in Assassin's Creed 3 a little bit as well, between Haytham and Connor, where they're both kind of battling back and forth with their own ideals, where each sees the other one as the villain, and they're kind of throwing back and forth these different ideologies, and you see that the subtle twists within them, within the story arc, within the narrative. But I'll touch upon that in part 2 as far as Haytham and Connor's relationship goes. People give Connor a lot of crap, but to be honest, he is a lot more interesting and a lot more compelling than some people care to look or even realise. I'll talk about that in part 2. Anyway, those are the 7 basic plots. Within any feature film and any game, you can pretty much, even though there are a few exceptions, like I said at the start, there are a few exceptions, but you can pretty much boil them down to one of the 7 basic plots I just spoke about. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, please let me know in the comments. I will be doing part 2 of this, and then from then on, we'll kind of see where it goes. I'm more than happy to do critical analysis of all the Assassin's Creed games, break down all the major details in terms of story and character arcs, and I guarantee you, should I do that for the AC games, I will reveal things that even the hardest of AC fans may not have spotted. I guarantee it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Take care, be safe, and I will see you in the next one. Love you all. Unite. Went out. Peace.